recording started, and a question was posed on what is the quickest way to understand impermanence. And there's more than one aspect to impermanence that we could be considering, and there's more than one level of understanding. There's an ordinary worldly level, and then there's a level that's liberating. And then of the ways of angles of impermanence, there are different aspects of the whole mind-body experience in which we can have some insight into impermanence. The Buddha recommended one particular one is particularly beneficial, as I recall, as I understand. So to lay it out, we're going to start with just ordinary understanding. And we could understand that the mountains eventually, are not so tall. And someday this earth is said that it'll, be swallowed up by the sun. Things are impermanent in really long periods of time. So there's this really big picture of impermanence. We can use that to loosen our grip and help us develop more wholesome states. There is understanding impermanence of one's body, that if I were to have hair, if I hadn't shaved my head yesterday, you would see little gray here, little gray there, because the aging of the body. And yeah, when I look at old photos of myself, those blossom-like cheeks, those big eyes. Yeah, it all just changes. Like the reflection by Ambapali, this is the truth that the Buddha said, about how the body just it gets older, it loses its loveliness, and will eventually pass. And we know this about ourselves, we know this about our loved ones. So we can see, there was a time in life when you yourself were just the tiniest baby, and then you grew and you changed, and grew and you changed. And the changing hasn't stopped. The changes became a little more subtle for a while. And then there's certain periods in life where they suddenly speed up again, like right around 40. It suddenly hits again. I think right around 60, you suddenly look 70. So you can look at your life and say, well, this whole bodily experience that I've had here has never been a persisting, unchanging anything. And so it would be unwise of me to think that this body will persist in the way that I want it to be. It'll persist forever. But rather it's going to continue its relentless series of changes. And so what does that do? That kind of reflection can help us develop wisdom in a number of ways. It can cut down our contempt for others, cut down our pride, our intoxication with youth, our intoxication with health and ability. I had a friend who was quadriplegic who referred to the rest of the world who were not disabled people as the temporarily able-bodied. And I thought, what a wise thing to say. I was shocked by the first time he came out with the temporarily able-bodied. Do you know Daniel Barnes? She knew this guy. Californian.
Tabs. Tabs.
Oh, the temporarily able-bodied. You folks who are temporarily able-bodied, you are the tabs. Of course, you're temporarily able-bodied in some ways, disabled in some other ways. You can no longer run, a 4-minute mile like you could in your youth, maybe. And so you feel disabled over that, and you're not realizing that the, person next door to you can't carry their trash out to their own trash can. Like we're always on a continuum with this until we're like dead. Pretty much, but so understanding that does remove the intoxication with youth. It can help us not be so silly around things like lust. It can help us be empathetic with others instead of feeling like my able-bodiedness, my healthiness, my youth, whatever youth I might have, is superior to the condition of this person or that person, the other person, but realize, oh, you're in the same boat with these people. See some old person shuffling along the road. You don't look down at them. You know, this is you. This is your future that you're peering into. So understanding about the impermanence of the body can help you develop wholesome states in multiple ways and develop wisdom into, you know, deeper truths of life. And then is understanding impermanence about your loved ones. This is where we cling and cling and cling. And even just the thought of losing a loved one, or they're having some reduction in their abilities, the fact that they're temporarily able-bodied, these are hard things to swallow, hard truths. But if we can look at them, you know, without overwhelming ourselves, if we can look at them in little bits and pieces, just developing a little bit of wisdom about how these things stand, then it's a little bit of a shock absorber for the heart. You know, you get a puppy and the whole world is ahead of the puppy, but your dog is 14 years old and he's incontinent and you're carrying him up and down stairs and pulling your back out. That's not an unforeseen result. That's the natural thing that should happen with that puppy. And if you knew that the day you got your puppy, then as your dog slowed down and his muzzle got gray and things were changing and he couldn't get up and down stairs, it won't be a huge disappointment. It's like, yeah, this is his phase of life. And you can even be there for him more emotionally because you weren't shocked, right? So you can actually be a better loved one to your loved ones. You can be a better partner, a better parent, a better pet guardian. You can be a better neighbor and so forth. When you understand that these temporarily able-bodied beings around you with whom you have so much affection and attachment are in the same situation as you, and some on an accelerated pace in their changes. And you know, that shock absorbing of it can help you be more present, help you plan better, help you cause your loved one to get a will so that there's not total loss of disaster if they pass or get into a situation where you have to make hard decisions. So there are all kinds of benefits to it. But of course, you have to do these things carefully, because if you're standing there going, my doggy is going to die someday, and crying and crying, crying, and he's just like wagging his tail going, why aren't you playing ball with me? then you miss the point. It's like a gutter ball in bowling. You kind of threw the ball sort of the right direction, but no, you didn't get it. And someone else is going to say about that. It went away. Maybe it'll come back. So another aspect of recognizing impermanence of your own body and of others is mentioned by the Buddha when he said, those who know that we all die settle their quarrels. It's one translation you could have of that Dhammapada verse. So I really appreciate that angle of it. You know, when we really get it, that that we're really impermanent, that death is going to come, then some of the petty causes of our arguments are not so compelling. We really will see things in a way to emphasize the compassion, emphasize wish for peace and harmony, and all the little things that we would scrape against each other and get all upset about. It's like, well, what is that really? When you remember that, any of us might not be here later today or tomorrow or next week. Any of us might die. There is no end of people who say, the last thing I said to my loved one was such and such harsh word, and then they died in a car wreck or such and such happened, heart attack, something, and then they have to live with that hard word, that being the last thing they said to them. That's one of those things that causes a lot of suffering when a person has died suddenly. But if we had, if everybody involved had day by day remembered impermanence, then it might have been less likely to, part for the day or for that time period with a little bit of hard feelings, because you would treasure each other more. So understanding impermanence can allow us to be more kind, treasure each other. When we remember the truth of each of us just being a temporary visitor, then treating each other not so nicely isn't really an option, is it? If we're really, really honest about that, we really look at that quite clearly. Let's see, going back to my theme here. Any other angles of worldly wisdom, folks? Any other angles of worldly wisdom that are developed with understanding impermanence of your own body and the bodies of others? Any other angles that jump to your mind within that narrow range? Nothing? I've really nailed it that well? Nothing, okay, fine. And then there's impermanence of your stuff, possessions, career, all kinds of other, identities. When we remember impermanence of all of these things, again, we have to work with the material carefully, because we don't want to just push ourselves into despair. Oh, it's all going to collapse anyway. Like, be careful with this material. It's a knife with a sharp blade. You want to grab it by the handle, not grab it by the blade. But we can build up our appreciation and hold everything with a loose grip. And how does it go for you, Adriana, when you hold things with a tight grip? How does it go for you, John, when you hold things with a tight grip?
They slip out.
So it's even futile. So we hold it with a tight grip, and then we have these downsides of holding things with a tight grip. So one of the things that happens when I'm holding things with a tight grip is I get grumpy. I get angry. I'm irritable. Everything I'm trying to control, I've got a tight grip, and don't you mess with it, cause. But if I remember everything's impermanent, it's all slipping through the fingers like sand anyway. And it's not all so darn serious. I went back to my old law school as a nun. It was coming towards exam time, and people were very, very intense, and not one of them batted an eye or looked over at the Buddhist monk, because exams are so important. I'm not saying that a Buddhist monk should necessarily be important, but it was really interesting to see the absolute complete dearth of interest. There's nowhere else I've gone in the world that there was a dearth of interest. Never, ever, anywhere that there was a dearth of interest at my entry, anywhere. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. They really don't give a darn, because their grades are just so important. I'm trying to remember probably what percent. I would guess maybe about a third of the marriages dissolved during law school. Because if you didn't have the law school career front and center as 100% important, way overbearing the importance of the feelings of your spouse and the needs of your kids, et cetera, you probably didn't get good grades. And marriages broke up left and right. As I recall, it was 3 years of law school training. It was extremely intense. My point being that if someone were to maintain an understanding of impermanence, that you're working all this hard, but there's going to become a day that you're going to retire, you might want that person still beside you when that happens. Like, the career is just going to cover a certain part of life, and then there's still life beyond that, and then they're still going home to an empty house, or a house warm with your spouse's companionship. So whatever it is that you're obsessed with and that you've got right in front of you, and it's the most important thing, is it really, when you remember impermanence? Some people are into car racing, some people are into sports, some people are into whatever. other transient things. You know, when we remember all this is impermanent, then what do we consider more important? And so remembering all this important, this is the most important thing I should have said about the body being impermanent. We got a short time here. Whatever we're going to do in this life, the clock is ticking. The problem is you don't know what it's set for. So I made up a story, a metaphor. I told it in real extended version, but just in brief. Imagine that someone has thrown a party that's the most awesome party that anyone has ever thrown. It's got every band you've ever wanted to see, every writer, every politician that you actually wanted to talk to. It's got, it's got religious leaders, monks. It's got every kind of person you ever wanted to see. Your loved ones are there. Maybe even your deceased loved ones are there. I don't care. Throw it all in. The best foods, every food you ever wanted to try, every sight, every sound, every smell, every taste, like everything you ever, the gardener, the master gardener you always wanted to learn from is over there. You could ask questions. Like everything is there. It's the most amazing party ever. But there's a catch. Once you walk into the party grounds, if you leave, you can't come back. So you need to, make sure you don't have any big errands or anything that you would want to run and do. So you park your car, you walk in, you're so excited. You're going to go here, you're going to go there. You get a tap on your shoulder. And the guy arranging the parking says, you parked in front of somebody. You got to move your car. I can't go back out. I won't be able to come back in. He said, okay, look, when that person's ready to leave, you're going to have to go. But you can stay until then. So you have no idea when you're going to leave. You thought you were going to be at this party venue for a week. Now you have no idea. It could be minutes. It could be the whole week. What would that do to your priorities? Would it change which people, food stand situations that you would approach first? Like if you had a relative who has come in from Russia that you can see during this party, but you may never see again, but there was that great band over there, you might have gone to the band first. You might have gone checked out those chocolate covered strawberries right over there. But hey, it's the relative that you might not see again, so you're going to make a beeline for them. Something like that. Is this all making sense? When you realize that you may have to leave at any minute, your priorities change. If you think you've got a lifetime like a day about you, you're going to be around 10,000 years, probably. You can lollygag, fool around, mess around, enjoy some sense pleasures here and there, learn a thing over there, play around with that, go find these games. You can just kind of hang out and have some fun on the way to doing the serious bit. And you'll see this kind of worldly wisdom taught quite well in many religions. Any good religion is probably going to tell you these exact things, because this is not part of the teaching that's unique to a Buddha. This is part of ordinary, good, solid, worldly wisdom. And I'm not saying worldly wisdom in a way to put it down. I mean, there are people in this world who really have a saintly heart and a saintly life. A lot of real wisdom. Some of the grandmothers and folks, earthly wisdom. Reed, I think I'll use that, earthly wisdom. I think that kind of covers it. Earthly wisdom. Worldly sounds very low, but earthly sounds rich. All right. Okay, so we talked about like mountains, kind of impermanence, your own aging process, impermanence, and the impermanence of your loved ones and people around you, and conditions, situations, and stuff. There's another level of impermanence, which is seeing like a rising and passing of phenomena on a really, really subtle level that you could understand in meditation. So you can kind of see it a bit in your breath, like you take an in breath, you take an out breath. Like, wow, it's always changing. You know, it arises, it peaks, it passes. And understanding just that the breath is always changing, you can understand better how everything is changing. But if in meditation, your mind gets really clear for a moment and you see rising, passing, rising, passing, rising, passing on an extremely fast level, like, you know, splits, you know, thousandths of a second kind of level, that's a whole other ballpark of impermanence. And some people find that incredibly helpful for making, you know, a lot better understanding about how this whole thing, you know, body, mind, experience fits together. The Buddha mentioned, well, I'm going to shift over now to not just worldly wisdom. So whether you're looking at the mountains, your body, your beloved, your stuff and situations, or even the rising, passing, moment to moment, all of that has the potential of helping us understand impermanence in a deeper way. The Buddha highlighted one particular angle that's especially powerful for liberating wisdom, which is seeing the displeasing angle of impermanence. A word that I've been adding into the reflection is that which is impermanent, suffering, subject to change, fit to be called self. That subject to change, I've been saying unreliable. To me, that really kind of captures the gist of where he's going with that. That which is impermanent, suffering, and unreliable, fit to be called, fit to be called this I am, this is mine, this is myself, non-venerable stir. There's I'm trying to it's almost all come back to my mind, but there's just one little bit that I'm missing somewhere. But somewhere in the Vinaya, the Buddha referred to that, it gives an example of the unreliability as when a monk is relying on a particular donor, a particular family for the food, and they don't show up, and it's unreliable. And I'm sorry that I can't pull that right back up in my mind at the moment in any more detail. But I just love that because, you know, when you're talking about your belly, when he's speaking to the monks and giving that example, it would just be so powerful. Like, right, unreliable. That it's such a disappointing thing when when the meal doesn't show up, and when an expected meal wouldn't show up. And so this disappointing nature of impermanence, let's say you're born with 20/20 vision. Well, what is it by the time you're 40? Right? Let's say that you're born with perfect hearing. What is it by the time you're 50? Or by the time you've listened to a lot of really loud music with headphones on. Right? So the original question was, what is the fastest way to understand impermanence? And so I've laid out that there's two levels on which to understand the impermanence, and that is for developing earthly wisdom, and then for developing supramundane wisdom. So there's an awful lot we can get out of understanding impermanence in ways that any good religion is going to hand us and encourage us and help us along with, or you know, just your wonderful great aunt or great uncle could just help you really get a lot more grounded and well directed in this life, urgency and all that. And then there's the teaching special to the Buddha. There's using the understanding of impermanence in a way that goes a little further beyond earthly saintliness, if you will. So the Buddha has these 4 noble truths that he taught us. And so the first noble truth is about this fully understanding this suffering. And second noble truth is about suffering being caused by desire, craving. And the third noble truth is about cessation being, it's imminent, it's here and now, it's right. It can be. The fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path of training to experience cessation of suffering. But what happens when we add some insight, some wisdom into impermanence on any of the various levels that I've gone over it? What happens to the second noble, regarding second noble truth, first and second noble truth, when we bring wisdom about impermanence to that? What happens? It would be kind of a wedge. So the Buddha talked about, of course, there's gratification and all the wonderful stuff, and gratification in so many ways of everything that we delight in. He didn't deny the gratification. That's a mistake everybody tends to make, that, oh, he's just down on pleasures. But he understood the gratification. He acknowledged it, said, yeah, it's there, but there's a danger. See, until you have a problem, you don't need a solution. And so there's always danger because there's always impermanence, right? Gratification, danger, and escape. So he gave the example of, just deal with this. He gave the example of a beautiful, beautiful young woman. Her teeth are gorgeous, her hair is gorgeous, her eyes are gorgeous, everything is just perfect. She's awesome, she's beautiful. And what is the danger? The danger is old age. She's going to change. She's not going to have these alluring qualities forever. And then, so you don't need a solution until you have a problem. So when you introduce the idea of impermanence, it helps us. Some things we can just see the suffering right off, but the delightful things, what's wrong with those? Well, there's gratification. What could possibly be wrong with all the gratifying angles of life? Well, because there's still this pesky impermanence. You can get everything absolutely perfect. You can, perhaps.
For a split second.
Or for longer. You could have the most amazing marriage and the most amazing career, the most amazing house and pets and everything. But there's still the niggling in the back of the head, that little tap on your shoulder of impermanence is still here. Impermanence is still here. Everything can change in a heartbeat. All of this can be gone in a heartbeat. So there's still at least a little underlying tension of the truth that you can't control all of this. It's all can come crashing down in a moment. And with one knock at the door, it could all be different. Everything is always in flux, unreliable. Everything, not just a little bit of everything. So there's tremendous, see, that's what makes this, all the pleasurable stuff matters bait. There's a hook there, right? So we're running along trying to get more and hold on to what we've got and run away from what we don't want and just very, very heedless. We're not seeing the danger. That no matter how great it is, there's still impermanence. And so understanding impermanence is kind of an accelerant, really helping us with our wisdom. We don't see impermanence for the sake of seeing impermanence. We see impermanence for the sake of letting go. For the sake of first of all, loosening that incredibly tight grasp. With impermanence, we have to loosen that. And right there's some relief. If you had these amazing pear trees that just had the most wonderful crops and everything was perfect about them, and one day some bulldozer somehow got them and you're just devastated. But if all along you had known, A blight could get them, a frost could get them, some kind of animals under the ground could, nick away the roots until, or beings under the ground could nick away the roots, they could all die. Fire could get them, this could get, a flood could get them, like anything could wipe them out. Then how tight is your grasp? How devastated are you when somebody's bulldozer comes over to the wrong yard and rips them all up? So you can see right there, there's a bit of relief, I don't know, this isn't scriptural, this isn't canonical, this isn't even straightforward Theravada, but I would like to think that experiencing the cessation of suffering is something that we get to do in little tiny drops and crumbs every now and then. You're suffering over the umbrella that you left behind, and then you let it go, and you can experience a moment of cessation of that bit of suffering. We just get to taste, cessation of bits of suffering here and there and yonder. I like to think that we're kind of training ourselves towards a bigger letting go of suffering, a bigger cessation. It is to be experienced, and maybe it's to be experienced, you let go of an opinion and now you don't hate somebody. You don't have to hate your uncle with the annoying opinions because you let go of your opinion, at least for a moment. So we can have cessation, and we can use understanding of impermanence as a wedge between us and our suffering more and more. But on a bigger picture, it is possible to apply the fact of impermanence to seeing through things in a very profound way. I have been told, and it may be scriptural, pseudo hunters can go digging around for this, maybe a wild goose chase, but you can look for it. It might be out there. I have been told that when people attain first stage of enlightenment, it happens through either primarily an understanding of suffering, or primarily an understanding of impermanence, anicca, or dukkha, suffering, or anatta, non-self nature. All three come together, but like the doorway tends to be one or the other for each person. I don't know if this is a particular teacher's teaching or if that's in the scripture somewhere. Sutta hunters, go at it. If you can find it, you get the gold star of the internet today. Okay, it's gone. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I was just still reflecting on that, becoming weary of dukkha, and that poem, and I think it's in the Sudhamma, and how that it all works together, where we see how we're creating our own suffering by grasping. So we see the impermanence. It all works together. So we're able to let go. We become tired of. I mean, if we're really aware and seeing how we create the dukkha for ourselves, the suffering for ourselves, by observing our response to anicca. Because it happens all the time. I mean, just finishing your meal. You had this great meal, and then you've finished eating it, and then it's like you're full, but you're still wanting. You see that how that impermanence is creating suffering for ourselves, or we're creating suffering for ourselves by clinging. So that weariness, the weariness of being weary of dukkha, becoming weary of dukkha. And I think that's one of the ways to let go. It just kind of echoing what Ayya was saying here.
So I think some person will see the impermanence directly. They'll see this, ever-changing nature of phenomena, all that what is it Kondonya said? All that which is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. And that can be a huge, the big breakthrough. Someone else will see whatever is subject to arising and is subject to passing. And in that there is suffering. So they'll have this big insight into the suffering. Somebody will notice everything arising and passing, and they'll see that that's the case even of this, not just this bodily existence, but even the mind, even the thoughts, even the sense of self. It's all changing, and they'll have a great insight into anatta. And so the breakthrough could be through anicca, through dukkha, through anatta. She was just laying out the dukkha one quite nicely. So that is our talk to you today on how to, well, the talk was supposed to be how to most quickly develop understanding of impermanence, but I think the talk that you got was how to aim your development of understanding of impermanence most effectively for liberation.
And then if you're holding your cup and it actually accidentally slips from your grip, then you can look and go, the law of anicca and Newton's law coming together.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu.
Ajahn Newton. Awesome. All right, so we're going to close. Bless you all.